Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'll first start with the kind of assessment of the current situation, which I kind of sorry to say that it's indeed not very inducive for this entrepreneurial spirit. Because basically in FP7 the research is okay, it's isolated. So you have good results and basically that stops in most of the cases. I mean, I don't want to overgeneralize, but that's the case. If you remember a bit the presentation this morning, we said that there is a three-pillar system, and the last one was the education system. So hopefully in a not very distant future, we will have a good support in academia, so that the students, apart from the, let's say, the technical subjects, they get a good basis for the entrepreneurial aspects as well. So when they go into the collaborative projects, they basically try to achieve two things. First of all, to obviously to obtain great research results, to kind of how to say, fulfill the technical part of their background, but then also to find an excellent field or excellent practice possibility for the entrepreneurial one, so that they already have a, let's say, the basic skills acquired, and a kind of they put in practice this, because, and then hopefully this will be in Horizon 2020, when it will be not only the possibility, but it will be a requirement. So if they want to have the chance, the opportunity to work on an exciting project, like, and we've seen some really incredible demos here, but also in other occasions. So if they want to be in that situation together with let's say, other researchers from around Europe, then they will have to think not only, okay, I do my research and that's it, but okay, to think next, how can we move this research from, let's say, from the lab into a small spin-off, into a small company. So it is a kind of, if you want, enabler, and a place where you can combine these two, if you want, two set of skills. So it will be even more challenging and more competitive, I would say, in the same time. Just to.
Any comment on that?
I would like to ask Viorel a question. Alan Sugar, the famous British entrepreneur, he said recently on television that engineers make very bad businessmen. Do you think there's something about the mindset and psychology of an engineer or a technical person which makes it difficult for them to become an entrepreneur?
No, I don't think so. I think, I mean, don't think the engineers are less, I would say, less cute or less, have less capacity for this aspect. It's just, I think they are a product of, I mean, talking as not as an average, okay, obviously there are exceptions perhaps that confirm or not the rule, but an average, I mean, they are the product of the, you know, the educational system, the academia, and so on. So if they have not been encouraged, if they do not see this, that this is a how to say, attractive opportunity, then you get what you have today. So I think there is a lot of potential there. You just need to, you know, fine tune or change a bit of a parameter, and perhaps a bit more flexibility, and in the curriculum of university would help. I think this is coming, but that you have a top-down and bottom-up approach, that not only, okay, you can choose everything, but then you might, in the beginning, in the basic curriculum, you might get a few subjects, like, you know, like a compulsory, and that will open the horizon, and that you can make a more informed, if you want, opinion, and choose other topics that interest you in this entrepreneurial field. Actually, I had, in the Bell Labs Day, I had an interesting discussion with one of my ex-colleagues from Alcatel. It's called Stefan Monterheim, and he, well, he's now an independent, and he worked with the University of Antwerp. And he basically had a a course on entrepreneurship and basically taught to technical students. And at like a kind of graduation of project, they had to, I don't know, like the possibility to, one of the possibility was to open a company or something like that, to have an initiative. And actually 50% of them did so. So I'm meeting with Gert and with Mr. De Bricker, who might know him. You might know him, the basically ex-CTO of Alcatel and inventor of Ideasel, and that they are exactly in this field and really looking forward to see what are their ideas in this field, in exactly this topic, how we can convince more technical students to look at this entrepreneurial aspect and as a part of their career.
So, Peca, if we can. So, on one hand, I perfectly agree, Viorel, that it's a matter of culture, like it has to be in the culture and in the education. And I plan to say a few things in my talk about ways, about specific courses. We have, for example, Northwestern on and entrepreneurship, and also how it's promoted, how it's awarded, and so on. But with respect to George's question, the fact of the matter is that the engineer does not have to run the company. The engineer has to create the company. And then there are plenty of business people to run the company. As a matter of fact, that's the first thing that the VCs are doing. They just tell the engineer to step aside, and they just put as a CEO one of the business people. And as a matter of fact, a lot of engineers have a hard time with that. But again, they don't have to run the company. They just have to have the culture and see the reward behind. Of course, the obvious reward is the monetary one, right? You just start a company, and at the age of 29, you're a millionaire, and so on and so forth. But it's also I assume, the joy of creating this and things of that nature. So it's not for engineers to replace the business people, but just to create a company and then just go hand in hand and run it.
But keeping in mind that 1 out of 10 companies collapse before the founder is 29.
That's true.
So you may not become millionaire.
No, but on the other hand, there are plenty of examples that this is... Anyway,
Yeah,
it's one of the motivators, right?
Peter, you want?
Yeah, I also had a question. These entrepreneurial startups, they usually start locally, and you already mentioned these innovation hubs or something, so there is already support at the local side, for instance, via the university, the region, the city, or other national support. So where do you see actually the European Union giving support? So what should be their focus, and what is the national things what should remain there? So how do you see that relation?
Indeed, one of the things that we see when we compare, basically, if you want the US, just to continue the same thing in the market, is that the European SMEs, and they have difficulties to access the internal market on this one, because once they try to move beyond their region, just to keep it at the regional level, then they kind of hit a wall. So that this is definitely one of the things where we want to add value. And if you look at the digital agenda for Europe, has this really has singled out this aspect. There are a lot of I would say discussion although in Digi Enterprise as well, but also for this aspect, especially for the web entrepreneurs. It's you can even think of taking advantage even beyond the European market, because the web it's just a worldwide platform. So, and I think here is the big difference between the US. In the US, you immediately have access to the whole US market. While in Europe, you still kind of have to go to the next barrier and next barrier.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question here, probably, you want to say something?
I was just briefly going to mention that it's my understanding that the huge difference between the US and Europe is the investment money that is available through venture capitalists or angel money and things of that nature. And you know, in the States, retirement funds, just a good part of that goes into investing into startups and so on. It's part of the culture. Because I guess the history, although it should be used, it does not predict the future. Nevertheless, it is part of the culture indeed. Yeah, the amount might fluctuate, the amount of money. The times might be slightly harder now than were so many years ago. Although some people would argue that therefore, if you have a really good idea now, it might be easier to get funding because the controls and the checks are more tight. But anyway, talking to colleagues here, by and large, it's my understanding that it's not part of the culture and the funds are not there to help startups.
Okay, all this refers to startups, spin-offs, often from coming out of universities, and also clever minds that want to start a new company. But moving a bit on to well-established industrial players, and we have plenty of them also in Europe. The question is, how can we, or what is missing there? What is missing to achieve more productive relationships between industrial players and academic institutions? It's a matter of fact, again, that it's not easy to do technology transfer in Europe. The universities, research institutions, they are developing a lot of interesting technology. And a lot of this technology is not used within the regional boundaries of the institutions developing that. Sometimes these end up in open papers, open for everybody. So if we, here probably we are addressing mostly the industrial people invited to this workshop today. What do you think is missing in the context of technology transfer? Why the technology transfer in Europe is difficult, slow in some cases? And perhaps also from the point of view of the Commission, what could be done to improve this relationship? Please.
My name is Frederick Rara. I manage a startup program out of Dublin. So every year I pick 10 companies to start. And I think the IPR for a company, access to intellectual property, being able to basically license that IP out of colleges, that's one of the criteria that the company would look at. And that's simply from an investment perspective, and also giving the time to a company to commercialize the research or at least reach their users, improving the case, how can that technology be applicable in the market. So I think that's one area that there's a scheme called EU R&D for SME benefits, and the impact section of that call is quite important, where the IP is released to SMEs for the timeline of the project. And in a way, that'll be very interesting to web entrepreneurs, I think, because that'll give them time to apply that IP market. So I don't know if the Commission is looking at that, clearing the IP from day one.
I think it's a very important point, because having been involved in several large cooperative European projects, I noticed exactly that the IPR issue is a difficult one. I don't know if it's different in the States. Perhaps Aggelos can shed some light on that, but for sure it's not easy within the European context.
Well, in the States, I do plan to say a few more things about it, but it's very well just defined after a lot of years of, I guess, thinking and defining and so on. So, in few words, if a professor develops IP, there is the technology transfer program that will just guide the person through the whole process of filing for the IP all the way to commercializing and so on. Now, if you have a grant from a company, then there's a specific agreement between the company and the faculty member that guides IP. Typically, the company has non-exclusive rights if the company funds the work, but also has the option to negotiate in good faith for exclusive rights, for exclusive use of the IP. And the non-exclusive rights, of course, the university cannot go and license the technology to a competitor of the company, so there are some fine lines. So as a result, there are a lot of patents. I mean, I've been involved in 25 plus or so just through agreements with industry. It's all spelled out, background technology going to that, and that's therefore the direct benefit of the company. They fund the project for a year or many years, whatever the case might be, and they do benefit from that. And yeah, I'm directing a center there that's funded by Motorola, and there is that's actually a bit of a touchy, or you might say, or long, or something that takes long to hammer out exactly the IP agreement with the company. There's a boilerplate agreement that the university has, but then each and every company has their own thoughts and so on. And by and large, the universities in the States are quite aggressive in making sure that they also have part of the IP. So it's a matter of negotiation to make this, long story short. There are a number of lawyers involved before you are able to sign the agreement, but it's something that everybody knows and expects. And that's actually one of the most effective ways to transfer technology. Probably it's obvious, right? The company funds the work, and then the company has the means to utilize this IP as part of a portfolio or directly commercialize it. And that's just a very smooth way into commercializing it, as opposed to the university trying to just commercialize an IP or so, although there are quite a few successful stories.
I guess, well, I think one of the, again, here is a main difference with the situation in Europe, because the European culture is more, from the academic side, is more based on public funding. So you don't have the pressure to go and try to commercialize your IP, because most of the budget that you need to run your group is given by public funding bodies. And this is probably opposed to what happens in the States, where the universities are sort of run as commercial enterprises.
I wouldn't put it exactly that way. There's a lot of federal money that is used in the States as well, like NSF, NIH, and so on and so forth. And in that case, there's no IP agreement whatsoever. But still, there are a good number of patents that come out of that. So even from federally funded projects, because the culture is such, and because the mechanism is there in place, this technology transfer office and so on, there are plenty of patents, which in that case, in most cases, they end up being utilized by the professors themselves in their startups. So that's then the other path of commercializing technology. Yeah. So it's not by no means that the majority of the funding comes through industry, but even again, for the public funding, there's IP that is utilized.
I don't know if we don't talk again about the mentality, because this is again another aspect of entrepreneurship, and IP. It's a way, okay, to monetize it. So whether in the first step you register this IP, this patent, and then in a second time whether you use it in your own startup or you sell it to a big company. But the idea is that you get some money to, I don't know, to fund more research or whatever, just to fund to support the university. But if we go back to the question how to develop more productive relations between industry and research in Europe, and definitely the IP regime is one of them. I would like to just come a bit on it a bit later to come back on it, but it's first, I don't know if we should not look, why are the issues? I mean, why do we put a question to develop more? So that means there is something that is lacking, and the difficulties. I was discussing this subject also last week, and I'm not sure if we are not talking about a different, mentality between university, a different language barrier. So perhaps we should start by acknowledging that the industry and academia, they are a bit different. So both industry and academia should think from the other point of view and say, okay, if we want to collaborate and so on, we should try to make the effort to bridge the gap between and kind of understand each other's language, what are the interests and so on. Because this is a win-win situation, not only in the research. I think the collaboration between academia and industry should start, if you want, earlier, and have benefits in the quality of the teaching material, to be more oriented towards, if you want, what is needed and what is needed. So when the students finish, they are good students. They can find a job and so on and so on. Now, regarding the collaborative research in the Commission, I think that this is definitely encouraged. So if you want a winning project, it's not a project that is only by the, let's say, by academia, and it's not a project only by industry. Sorry. So a winning project, if you want, is the one that have both this blend, so that you have not only the quality of a good research, but afterwards a good chance of commercializing this. Now, regarding the IP, unfortunately, Europe has a certain handicap with respect to US, and as you know, this is a very long story and complicated. So hopefully now there is a proposal on the table where, okay, apart Spain and Italy, there will be a more streamlined regime, so that once you fill the patent, then okay, you get it automatically, not only recognized and translated in the 3 languages and automatic in all the others. So this is definitely considered to contribute a lot in this aspect. So I can only wait for that we finally have a breakthrough here.
To make easy the process of patenting and transferring technology, IPR, to industry, is that what is expected? Well, I didn't understand exactly what was the, well, first of all, what is lacking in these countries you mentioned, what are they opposing, and what the process wants to achieve?
As you know, today it's a segmented process. You basically need to register in one country and then in another and in another. So the idea is to register once and to be recognized. But then the question is about the language.
Okay.
And yeah, that's controversial.
Of course, I understand when you say handicap, because we have in Europe 80 or 89 languages, and yeah, it's a more complicated issue than America, where you have only bad English and worse English.
That's it. But you do have US patents and international patents. So in most cases, the patents we obtain in the US, they're both. And actually, there's a fundamental difference that to obtain a US patent, you can apply after a year you publish the results. While for the international patent, you have to submit just before you publish anything. Yeah, I don't know exactly the landscape here, but nevertheless, yeah, most of the patents one obtains there are also international.
Okay, becoming a bit more positive and looking at the future, the next bullet point here on the slide refers to what is what we expect to happen tomorrow, in the future, in the near future. So perhaps here Jonathan can start the discussion. How, which areas of current 3D media research can become the mass market products and services of tomorrow?
I mean, I speak more from a journalistic point of view rather than academic, but from my personal thoughts are with regard to the future of 3D probably in the next 5 years' time is there'll be a huge growth in the theme park industry. I just went to Blackpool recently, don't ask me why, but there was a brand new 4D experience there which was quite breathtaking and the audience absolutely loved it. I know in Paramount are building a brand new theme park in south of Spain. So the technology there is getting amazing with 4D and 5D cinemas and all that. And I think that there's been over the last, because every day I live 3D, I read 3D, and there's certainly been over the last year or so, the commercial side of 3D hasn't been aligned with the innovative. The subject also is fantastic, but there hasn't really been a focus on what audiences really want. And the industry can be accused of just sort of going into this without any real sort of, I don't know if they did the research, but a good example would be the mobile phone industry. LG Optimus hasn't sold as well as it was expected. HTC didn't even bother promoting the stereoscopic side of their phone because it hadn't had the demand they expected. And also, something negative, but Nintendo 3DS didn't sell as well. So I think that over the next 5 years' time that there'll be a slight slowdown in what people have got to make money out of this, and there's certainly a resilience. People like Sky 3D in the UK and 3Net have got the money to continue to put into this, and they're obviously hoping that this will translate into subscriptions like it has done with HD, I know, in the UK. So I think the research that's going in, for example, like companies like Cameron Pace Group, the James Cameron company, who have put amazing research into their rigs. I saw a stunning production of Cirque du Soleil at IBC, and there's no denying that if you saw that in 2D and 3D, even people who hate 3D were saying that that was better in 3D. So there will be a premium to the next 3 or 4 years, I think, of high-end multi-camera premium shows, concerts, films, music concerts do very well as well, and sports. Over the next 2 or 3 years, that's where the particular growth will be. I don't think we'll see 3D ubiquity as some people are expecting. I could be completely wrong. So theme parks are a thing that, with regard to the question of media research, BBC are doing some amazing things. A thing called i3D Live, where they're using multiple cameras and extracting a free viewpoint camera. They used that recently, the 3D coverage of Wimbledon. So I think we'll see more of that, not to the end user, but more kind of the production side of things using 3D technology. Super high vision, which is quite a long way away, but I saw a demo. If you guys get to see super high vision, I'd really suggest you go and see it because it's absolutely breathtaking. We saw a football game in super high vision and the last space shuttle launch. 8K resolution, it just blows you away, it almost looks 3D. So I think that is really the future, and people tend to prefer HD over 3D. Nobody hates HD, but there are people who hate 3D. We've got to face that. So I think we should see, and you can actually extrapolate 2 camera feeds from a super high vision feed. So I think there will be in the future the option to see 3D from that. The interesting things have come about. You know, Sony are looking into the 3D televisions, and you can now, one person can see one image of a game, and the other person can see a completely different image without the glasses. So if you play multiplayer gaming, that appears to be doing particularly well as well. And yeah, it's all, you know, the media research and everything. I think it's such an impossible question for you to answer because nobody right now knows how to generate the money. And I think if people, there is a danger right now of sort of some of the negativity that's come through because it was rushed, possibly because of the quality of the 3D TV sets. Now, obviously, passive technology versus active technology is quite a big debate, but next year we should be seeing some full HD passive 3D TV, and most people do prefer wearing the lightweight glasses, which is, you know, almost just like regular glasses now. So I think that's where we'll see a certain uptake. I think we can't sort of think that just because 3D TVs are selling that there's going to be demand. We have to, right now in the next few years' time, it's going to be high-end premium content that's going to appeal to people with the extra money, surplus cash, because you buy a 3D TV, you probably don't even notice 3D half the time. So I hope that doesn't sound too negative. It has got a really good, interesting future, but I think we need to really focus now on the demand and what audiences really want from it.
Sorry, Jonathan, could I follow that, follow that up with another question? If we look back about 100 years, stereoscopic photos were very fashionable, and there was a craze which lasted a few years. And then all of a sudden people got bored with it and it disappeared. Then back in the 1950s there was a craze for 3D cinema. People flocked to the cinemas wearing their red and green specs. Everybody enjoyed it for a couple of years and then it disappeared again.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what makes you think that that's not going to happen all over again?
Because, well, a lot of people would have argued before that the technology wasn't there. So when, in the old days, the projectors had to be perfectly aligned, didn't they, to get the matching images. That issue is gone now because we've got digital, so everything's perfectly aligned. 3D does look great, apart from the fact that the image is darker. There's a whole thing about how Michael Bay, the director of Transformers, had this big campaign to get all the projectionists to turn the brightness of the bulbs up, and that did relatively well. But I mean, it's a really good question. Again, if you look at the figures, Harry Potter actually sold more 2D ticket sales than 3D. Transformers did relatively well. Titanic will do huge business, I think we all know. Everybody's going to go and watch that. I've got like a little poll on my own website that shows that a lot of people are going to watch that. Star Wars is going to do very well. And I think basically, people have told me you can't go backwards now. But I think, I spoke to a guy who works with James Cameron, a guy called Vince Pace, and he said that it was always going to be a levelling off. So you had the Avatar experience, and then you had, it sort of carried on with Clash of the Titans, and then Airbenders, which are really poor conversions. So then it's gone down, there's this negativity, but it will level off. And the industry is still sustainable between 30 and 40% of ticket sales. So if you're still getting that, it doesn't have to be the 70-80% like Avatar. It will still be commercially viable for a company to make something in 3D. It's cheap now. I mean, digital cinema installations are everywhere, and the prices of 3D production will come down, and you can still charge a slight premium on a ticket. So that's why I don't think it'll go, because it can still be made to make profit as long as it doesn't go like too low. If it's in the 10% area, then you know, yeah, I think it's about this time.
Okay, thank you. I think it was a very interesting insight of. And now looking at a more sort of social aspect, how might 3D technology change future lives, and what are the commercial and social implications? Perhaps here again, Jonathan or Aggelos, which can start discussion.
I'll have to think of my answer.
Well, actually, the question was posed to me maybe 15 minutes ago.
Well, that's the point.
But nevertheless, I would think, just not having really given it much thought and so on, but that you know, experiencing virtual worlds, for example, is going to eventually affect people's behavior and interpersonal relationships, and people are going to blur the division between real and virtual worlds. And this applies primarily to the younger generations. Some people argue that for older people like myself, you know, 3D is out, this is out, that is out, because your brain has not been wired. You need your brain to be wired in a certain way to enjoy 3D and enjoy virtual worlds and so on. So you have to start quite young and so on. But then some of the social type of implications is also to see where the personal, the human rights end in these virtual worlds. It's of these cases that the law in very many instances is behind technology when it comes to internet and virtual 3D worlds for that matter. So I would think that that would be a domain of you know, continuous debate, and also the law chasing technology in some sense, and being faced with brand new situations every day and things of that nature. But then the the futurists would be talking about just body transfers and personal downloads that again will blur the lines between real and virtual, and will definitely have an effect, I don't know exactly which way obviously, on people's behavior and people's interpersonal relationships. So these are my 2 cents.
Well, I think just to answer a bit also on the previous question, because Jonathan mentioned 3D, I would say predominantly to entertainment or to... I think there is a place for 3D technologies to kind of move behind the current situation where it's mostly on entertainment into other areas. And actually, we've done a sort of study which is Vision 2020, and this was one of the major, I would say, trends, that you would have this move from entertainment to other industry, where you use the 3D as a enabler. And I don't know if the comparison is adequate between when the color television appeared, right? It was also the same in the beginning, but then now it's in all our lives. So I think something like that sort, that the 3D will be will change our lives. For example, my colleagues from Directorate E are very keen to use 3D technologies for creative industries, like fashion and so on. Gaming, it's also another I would say domain where we think that the 3D will have I would say a very important effect. Not to mention the cultural heritage. I think we have a more immersive, and we've seen a bit of that in the morning. So I think the 3D is there to stay and to move beyond the if you want the movies and so on. Even if you've been in Poznan, we're talking about 3D internet. Okay, when you have, for example, your avatar in 3D and you will kind of interact on Facebook in this way.
I'll just very quickly echo that, because I know I did focus on entertainment, but I work sometimes with a company called Initial, which is a 3D production company in London, and they do a lot of the medical side of things. And it's really, really generally beneficial for medical. And as a company I recently interviewed called IC3D that developed a camera with just one lens that has a mechanical system inside that can actually get 2 images. Maybe use that for, I can never say, endoscopy. And the surgeon said that it was absolutely 100 times better and more accurate. So that's a perfect example.
Stereo endoscopy, something like that. Okay, perhaps you have noticed that we are recording the discussions, the questions and presentations. The aim is to post that in the EMC Square website. So we hope that this discussion will continue. I think for the sake of time, 3D exactly. We are running a bit out of time. We are a bit late, and we have still invited a presentation from Professor Katsaggelos, who probably is going to illustrate or elaborate a bit more about the points we just discussed. So I would like to close this panel now, saying thanks to the panelists and you for attending, and move to the presentation from Professor Katsaggelos. Thanks.